Okay. Okay. So, we're back. So, a few things. First, you all are incredibly thoughtful. So, first, one of the tables asked me a question that made me realize I'm going to change my hypothetical next time. I'm going to add another fact in there, which is going to be that a principal donor to your company partially helped to fund this opera. Yeah. I'm going to add that. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Um, just a couple of other things that came up while I was talking to some folks. I want to reiterate again that there is no magic bullet or silver bullet to solve any of these issues about bias that we're all trying to figure out right now as institutions and individuals. If there was, someone would win a Nobel Prize and make a lot of money, right? But it's going to be very, very specific to, as Nathan said, your values, the values of your company, the scale of your company, the organizational culture of your company. All of these are things that are going to have to be figured out as you try to figure out what to, how to handle and implement, hopefully, what will end up being an anti-harassment culture of equality and inclusion. Something else that I didn't really reinforce, but that I should have, is the crucial role of unions that the panelists raised. And for a lot of your companies, it sounds like you really are moving towards very comprehensive, very fulsome policies about how you want people to behave. So consider maybe including those in the union contracts next time as well, right? That, I think, is something. So I really want to thank whoever said that. And I think next time I'm also going to change my PowerPoint. Instead of calling it the star, I'm going to call it the genius, right? Because that's really what it is at bottom. Is so often we're afraid to challenge people who have been denominated geniuses in creative cultures, because there's that sense that we all have to take care of them, right? But also we're just afraid of alienating them. So those are some things that I picked up. Someone asked me also just to ruminate just a little bit about zero tolerance. So zero tolerance is something that's very attractive to me as a feminist. It means, no tolerance for behavior that we have found to be unacceptable in the workplace. I do have a little bit of pause about sometimes how it hashes out on the ground, though, that sometimes when institutions and organizations feel that they have committed to zero tolerance, they feel that they need to rush to judgment and that there can't be any context or nuance. And I really would caution you against that, right? So anytime you're trying to figure out whatever your anti-bias policies, your anti-sexual harassment policies are, your policies of reporting, you need to make sure that you are balancing zero tolerance, which, again, I think we should all be doing that. But you have to balance that against due process to people who are accused of things, right? You have to leave room for things that are legitimately misunderstandings. And dare I say it, there are some contexts in which people want or have earned a second chance. And frequently, you want to enlist the perspective of the person who's making the complaint in that, right? Sometimes that person can say, I really want this behavior to change. And maybe I want an apology, maybe I want the person to go through training, but I don't necessarily want the person gone, right? Maybe for all kinds of reasons. So I think it can be very, very nuanced. So even though I think zero tolerance is important, in some of the contexts where I've seen people announce it as like, that is our policy, right? You can sometimes end up painting yourselves into corners. And certainly at the university, we have this issue a lot where we've announced zero tolerance and then victims don't come forward. Because they say, if I come forward, then this person's going to be kicked out of school. And I don't feel that, as much as I don't like what happened to me, I don't think it's worth expulsion. So sometimes you end up painting yourself into a corner. It can have unintended consequences. So do any tables, maybe 2 or 3 tables, want to report out about your conversations? Can I pick on my home team? Are you the executive director? I always knew.
So we kind of role-played the situation, role-played the meeting. And
Hello.
So our group role-played the meeting and really kind of discussed what it would, what the young artists would feel comfortable, what they would need in order to feel comfortable with keeping Pat on as a director, and what actions we would need to be ready to take should an issue arise, and how we would convey that to all of the artists in the season to make sure that we had a plan in place, and that they knew we had a plan in place should any issue arise, not just with Pat, but across the board, and also that we had the full support of the board behind us in making that decision.
Great, great. Who else would like to report out? We've got someone in the back, all the way in the back there. Oh, come get this microphone. Go get the microphone's coming from Gina.
I'm coming.
Ah, they're going to converge. Who's going to get there first?
So many microphones at the same time. We very unilaterally decided right away that we're not keeping Pat on for any reason whatsoever. And came up with a couple of alternatives on how to replace them, and what language to use with the board. And we also assumed before you said that there was an individual underwriter. So, and in our company, we were going to give Pat an option of resigning either quietly and coming up with some sort of health issue or family issue, or publicizing the issues in place. Right. Oh, and actually that was important. And asking Mark Skorka to come out and do a bit of training within our company about this issue, and frankly explain it to the company, to the artists, to the rest of the staff as to what happened and why we chose not to move on.
Right. Thank you.
Sure. Well, I didn't hire Pat. I came into a company that hired Pat before I was there.
See, I built the out into the hypothetical, right? This is a new person, so.
But yes, we did discuss the possibility that Pat might have been hired 2-3 seasons ago, and that things came to light in the meantime, and that we need to take them very seriously. So.
I love how you all are amplifying my hypothetical. It's great. It's great. Yes. Sure.
Sorry.
Or do you want to?
Oh, sorry.
So you're going to
I don't
go
wanna
first,
step
and then we're going to come to you. Yeah. Well, okay. All right. Yeah. I don't know.
Hello. So we asked a lot of questions about the scenario at hand, including, of course, recognizing the out that this person was hired before any of us joined the company, which was convenient.
I write hypotheticals for a living.
And one of the things that came up was that, from what we can tell in this hypothetical, this is mostly rumor at this point, and we don't have specific evidence within the grasp of our company to specifically make a judgment on this person. And we also felt like we were looking at this and realizing that we can't just look at this as the isolated instance of this director, but needed to consider how this could inform a larger conversation about the policies and culture of the organization. At which point we looked around at ourselves and realized that none of us, while we are all fantastic, are equipped to lead this conversation. So we're going to hire you to come in and lead a group think. And that's our next step to figure out how to move forward with this.
Okay, all right. All right.
Our group had a lot of the same things to say. One thing that wasn't hyper-specific in this, which kind of made us think in two directions, was how we would deal with this, either if this was, we were looking forward to a season and this person was contracted, or if we were already in the season and that was happening. Because a lot of the processes would probably be the same, but there might be a few snags in the latter case, in terms of momentum already being what it was, and sort of basically how do the difference between, you know, stopping something before it happens and sort of working with something in process.
Yeah. That's helpful. One more?
They
Right
gave
here?
me the mic already.
Oh,
so I
great,
guess I'll get
great.
started.
I've lost control. I love that.
So we analyzed this too. One of the issues that we had that our marketing director put out is we have to act quickly because we got to get ready. We got to decide which direction we're going and get the, you know, all the materials out. But we went through a very iterative approach of getting experts in, getting lawyers in, having a broad discussion of everybody to make sure that we had all the expert opinions. But at the end of the day, we looked at the morale hit that this would be on the employees. We looked at the potential legal liability, knowing all this, and we still allowed him to come, and then something happened, we'd just be writing a big check. And also, putting aside the sexual harassment piece, he clearly exercised horrible judgment as a leader by having affairs with two different people during a production. This is just not someone we wanted, so we decided to cut our losses, pay him off if we need to, because that was a better approach than the potential harm to our reputation and legal liability, and most importantly, to the morale of our employees if we kept him.
Let me ask you all this. Who else should be in the room that I didn't have in the hypothetical? General counsel? Okay. Makes a lot of sense. Union representative? Okay, that makes a lot of sense too. Anyone else? Yeah? Okay. It should be the chairman of the board. That's absolutely right. That's not just whoever's available for lunch that day. Right. It should be the board chair. That's absolutely right. Yeah?
Test. So some more information that our table wanted is there a paper trail at other companies? So we tasked our artistic director with reaching out to other artistic directors to find out if there is a record that's following this person or if this is something that we're instigating, because
Yes.
you don't want to start from square one if it's not square one.
And it also goes back to her point about, is this rumor or not? Like, we don't want to start making, this goes back to my point about zero tolerance has to be balanced by due process and treating people fairly, right? So we don't want to start making decisions based purely on rumors. Now, part of the challenge, all the executive directors in the room, raise your hand for a moment. Okay, so if someone called you and said, hey, I heard that so-and-so was a problem for you, would you have any hesitations about speaking about that? Yes, so that's the other piece of this, right, is sort of the fear that we have about the law coming down hard on us, which is how, back to my context at universities, I don't know why it's physicists, but there are these physicists who have been passed around from, you know, like, are you a physicist or, oh no, oh my gosh. But you're a lapsed, are you like a board member or are you? Okay, all right, okay. Well, you're not at a university, so, right. So there are these physicists, I don't know what it is about the culture, they get passed around from elite university to elite university. There were philosophers too. The last philosophers too. They get passed around, maybe it's that PHY, I don't know, but they get passed around from university to university, and the university thinks like, okay, we've got to get rid of them, got to get rid of them, got to get rid of them. Phew, they're gone. Not going to tell the other school what's going on. There may have been rape. There may have been all kinds. It also happens with, you know, some of the athletes. This happens with as well. They, you know, they're all these. They do these horrible things, and the school just wants them gone. And it's complicated because again, you want them gone, and then there's legal liability. But I really agree with both of you. You don't want to make decisions based purely on rumor, right? And sometimes you can even call the person. Hey, it's me, your employer, right? You're 1099 on the other end. I hear X, Y, and Z. Tell me what's going on, right? And if that's what's okay, so, you know, if you say that it's all X, Y, Z, then I just want to make sure that if I made can I get your permission to make a few phone calls, to reach out? And if I feel comfortable with this, I just want to make sure that we have an understanding about things, right? So sometimes just picking up the phone and hearing from the other person, I think, can also be helpful with the consultant advice of your lawyer, right? Another question back here.
Question, as a fantasy HR director, my first thing was to advise my executive director to not have this meeting.
Interesting.
Because if we have an obligation, moral and legal, absolutely, to do an investigation, this is a personnel issue and a personnel decision. And all those things that people said about rumor and real concern, it doesn't seem to me to be a group meeting.
Yeah, and that could be the case if the executive director decides not to have it be a group meeting, but at some point, the executive director is going to have to call each of those people in to advise them on how are we going to handle the donors, how are we going to have a conversation with the board, et cetera, et cetera. All of those actors are going to have to be in the room. If I was an ED, and I take a very team-based approach to things, I do try to have, and maybe the first phone call from the ED is actually to the lawyer, right? To say, hey, who can I get in the room? Can you give me some best practices about what I can and can't do? My impulse is to seek as much input as I can from the people who are essentially kind of quote-unquote officers of the company and are bound by confidentiality and everything else. But who can I have in the room? Who do you advise? And I want you to be there. So I think that's really important too. I have to hear from my physicist friend. I'm sure you're nothing like the others.
Not that it matters, but was Pat a man or a woman?
I purposely
Pat.
made the gender ambiguous. I don't know if some of you got that as the reference back to the old Saturday Night Live skits, but poor taste on my part. But yes. I purposed that I tried not to have any gendered pronouns in there.
Okay. I'm getting to this. But
All right. So the last thing I want to say is, again, thank you all. I learned so much from my co-panelists here and also from this discussion. You all are clearly, I think, on the right pathways to figuring this out, and what this looks like for each of your companies will, of course, look different. And I hope that there'll be an opportunity to maybe reconvene in a year or two and share some of the things that the companies have done. I want to say that we have to be realistic about this. We know that we're always going to have creeps and jerks and people who just believe in treating other people badly. But our challenge, I think, as a society, and in this case, as opera companies that I can tell are deeply committed to this work, our challenge is how do we move this from being the norm in the culture to flipping it so that these people are the outliers in the culture? So that when these things do happen, whoever it's happened to knows the dominant culture of this opera company is on my side. And whoever did this, they're the outlier. They're the person who's outside the culture. That, I think, is the challenge that we all have. So thank you all. Have a wonderful conference. And again, welcome to St. Louis.
Thank you, Adrienne.